continuing to refine my understanding of this whole thing of making the best of it, and also the idea of like living in the moment, which I think sort of the same idea, or the process is the same to get to both the place of making the best of it and of living in the moment. So it's been difficult for me to grasp the whole thing of, in whatsoever state you are, be content there, and like making the best of it and accepting situations and stuff, because there is somewhat of a, as always, somewhat of a like two extremes that you want to avoid, ditches on both sides of the road kind of deal with it. So, and on the one hand, let's see, say I'm in a situation that I feel is not ideal or is not where I want to be, and I'm unhappy. I think that like if there is a voice in me that is upset about something, or that recognizes that some value of mine is being infringed upon or isn't being fulfilled, like that voice has to be dealt with and listened to, instead of just sort of crushing it like, nope, just be happy, right? Just like paste on a smile and like pretend it's okay even though it isn't, kind of thing. This is the reality, and it's the same words in both cases. I think it's just a different attitude underneath. But there's one type of making the best of it that I think it also has to do with like the modern American like Protestant thing of just like always being happy and never showing really any weakness, or never allowing oneself to grieve or to have more like complex emotions, but always like being happy, always being on top of things, being productive. So it's easy to take the words optimism and... Is it raining? Oh, is it raining? Oh, it's raining! Optimism and making the best of it as like saying to perform happiness and like force happiness, and just like give up on your hopes, give up on your ideals, give up on what you know is fair and like right. Oh, it is raining. Quick look at the rain. Oh, it's a sun shower a little bit. Best weather. If that makes any sense. So I understand nowadays I'm really focusing on, okay, like listen to the feelings, if something's wrong, you have to deal with that. But that can, too much of it, that can like stick me in an attitude of continued like pessimism, where you're like, well, stuck on this one thing that isn't perfect, or that isn't ideal. And like obsessing over that, going around and around that. Whereas if I would like shift attention away from that thing, I could not perform happiness, not force happiness, but like be genuinely happy. So on the one hand, not blocking oneself from experiencing negative emotions, or from recognizing the imperfections or injustices in a situation. Not blocking that, but on the other hand, not blocking feeling genuine happiness that is available despite the said imperfections. And to me, the whole thing of, Philippians 4:11, whatsoever state I am therewith to be content, etc., is a question of, if you think of that, like what I had talked about, like sort of fluid of like light that you could think of as like energy or love or like joy, is, and you have certain channels and certain connections to that source at all times, and it's like a question of finding those channels, keeping them open, and in adverse circumstances, or even in adverse circumstances, how to honestly access joy. And feel real joy and real contentment. And real like thriving. And I keep coming back to the phrase making the best of it, first because of that it says making, which to me this is a very creative thing. And it's analogous to the way that, in every even extreme environment and harsh environment, there's some animal or micro or whatever that has adapted to that environment and that gets what it needs in those circumstances and that thrives there and that has sort of shaped itself to that environment. And yeah, the more that I interact with, the more that I live, the more that I see how like malleable reality is, how malleable I am to an extent. And how malleable are the words and concepts that I'm working with, and to what extent they can be molded and shifted, not in like a forceful way, not in like a manipulative or turning them against their true nature kind of thing. Not in a way that feels like betrayal, like, well, I'm going to put you in a horrible situation and you just have to be happy about it. But like it genuinely, the world of my perception is malleable. I am malleable. The words that I use to adapt and genuinely be able to thrive with the limitations. There's always limitations, right? Some stronger than others. And that gets back into crucifixion and vocation and being a finite being. And then this other half of the phrase being making the best of it. I think I had talked once a little bit about the idea of, instead of seeing everything in terms of just one, because we naturally want to make hierarchies of things and rank things and structure things. And I think that's just how reality is. There's hierarchy to it. But it's not just this one hierarchy, right? And there's hierarchy to reality of good and bad, and I value being high up on those hierarchies. And if I'm lower down on one that's important to me, I'm like, I don't like that. But there's a way to preserve that value for excellence and being in a good place, even in adverse circumstances. And I think it has to do with, for the way I put it is, instead of seeing just this one hierarchy of, say, okay, it's a good day, or I'm in good circumstances, and life's going well, I'm okay, and then positioning everything on that one single scale, and maybe being all down because like, seeing multiple interacting and overlapping hierarchies, which there are at all times, and noticing and focusing more on the hierarchies that I am higher up in. Not saying that the pain doesn't matter, but shifting attention to stuff that doesn't hurt at the moment. Because that's, yeah. So, for instance, well, a very, hold up, did I have another example? Yeah. So that's a little bit more symbolic or abstract way of putting the idea of like counting your blessings and finding things to be grateful about. Finding the things that are the best in this situation and putting the attention there, putting the emphasis there. In that way, those things really are good and you honestly do. It's like genuine happiness is not forcing it. A very mundane example, the other day the water at our apartment was out and like wasn't going to be fixed for a while, couldn't take a shower, etc. And it's not great. And there are certainly negative aspects of it. Convenience, we go down in the hierarchy of general convenience and ease of life. But there's also other good things and other hierarchies that are, like, there's highlights, which is, well, for one thing, it started raining in the night, so I could, like, get some water from the rain. Not to drink, don't worry. Then the apartment manager brought, like, pizza and, like, bottled water for us, and there was a little bit more of a community than there normally is in the apartment because you know how it is, there's no community these days, but everybody was come together because of this. We're all in the same situation. I feel like I felt a similar thing during quarantine. I was like, wow, everyone's alone together instead of it just me being alone as always. I felt solidarity in that. But anyway, and then thirdly, my climbing gym had showers, so I could take a shower there, and it was great. So it's not like I'm saying, well, you know, it doesn't matter that I don't have water, like I deserve to be in this bad situation, or just like ignoring the upset and the inconvenience that comes from that. It's not like I'm like stifling that, but rather making the best of it and highlighting the good parts of the situation. And in that case, it becomes genuinely more a positive experience than a negative one. Yeah, making the best of it. I'm not sure if this language of like hierarchies and scales of good and bad, multiple interacting, makes sense to anyone else, but it makes sense to me. And that's the way that I can understand stuff like being grateful or like finding the best and looking on the bright side, etc. Because I don't know. I don't want to just like ignore situations. Just like turn off that part of me that discerns and judges. I think that's an important part of me. But there are different ways to frame something. Anyhow, the process by which one makes the best of it, I think, is the same as the process by which I've been learning to more live in the moment, right, rather than thinking so much about in the future and thinking so much in the past. For me, it's usually more the future. And for me, I don't understand this as like, okay, turn off your ability to remember things. Turn off your ability to anticipate the future. And to me that feels like blinding myself and cutting off parts of my humanity that I don't want to cut off. Thank you. I would rather be miserable and capable of my full capacity of, it's always sounded when people say just live in the moment. It's always sounded to me like that. Blind yourself and just kind of go along. I don't want to do that. But at the same time, it's definitely a negative experience and it definitely makes no sense really when, say, I've got water from the rain and I'm fine for now, but I'm thinking, oh no, what if it doesn't get fixed for 2 days? What if it doesn't get fixed for 3 days? What am I going to do? And I'm borrowing trouble from tomorrow, right? Or if I'm genuinely okay and say I'm watching a video and having my supper and sitting with Grigri and I'm just thinking about, when the water gets fixed, it's going to be so much better, and unable to see what is right in front of me. Those are definitely bad. And they don't really make sense. Because again, I'm blocking myself from sources of joy that actually are there for me. However, I guess it has to do with the word of the present or presence. To me, my mind and consciousness can genuinely be present to realities outside of this limited, immediate, chronological moment. Where your treasure is, there is your heart also, right? And my general state of life, even when I'm happy or when I'm sad, tends to be distributed across things I'm noticing in the sensory present, abstract sort of ideas, memories, hopes, my imagination. I try to think of time in a less linear or strictly linear way, but as more of patterns across time, and so it doesn't make sense to me to put it in terms of, okay, everything you can just sense around you is all that there is. But at the same time, everything that I'm currently present to is all that there is for me right now. So it's a similar place that I get to. And let's see. To me, it's no problem if I am thinking about the past or the future or things outside the physical, immediate present, but I'm bringing those things into the present, and my memories or my anticipation is increasing my present joy and happiness. That's okay for me. That even feels like living in the moment to me because I'm present and things are smoothly developing. But what's not ideal is sort of outsourcing the present to the past or to the future. And again, shutting myself off to what is present for me immediately and thinking, back then in a state that I'm not now able to reach, I was so happy, or in the future in a state that I'm not now able to be present to, I will be happy, and almost draining off my life into that box of stuff that's more distant, if that makes sense. It's where the emphasis is. And as long as the emphasis is on the present, as in what my consciousness is present to now, then it's good. Because when I think of the times when I feel I'm really present in my life and I'm really living in the moment, in the devenir, the unfolding present. There are two types, and one of them is like a flow state where whatever is going on right now, like, is so absorbing that it's just taken all of my attention. And I'm like completely fixed on the immediate physical present, or like I'm not good enough in climbing to get this while I'm climbing very much, but sometimes being with people, if a person is engaging enough, you're just locked in completely to them in the moment. And so it's just like that one sensation in that one like moment. It's very focused. But the other type, or I also can think of other times, and for me more often it's like this, when like say I'm walking and sort of looking around vaguely, and at the same time I'm thinking about, or my mind is also in sort of other places, and it's almost like a piece of, like a harmony, like a chord, where I'm thinking about this, say, passage of writing, and I'm thinking about this memory and this hope and like that tree over there, and like it's an integrated, coherent experience tying in many times, many places in like one whole. And it's like completely fulfilled instead of doing the whole thing, longing after something that is not current thing. And this experience is described really well by this article on LitHub about epiphanic, it has to be epiphanic, right?
Epiphanic.
Yeah, that. Epiphanic writing by Tehu Cole. How authors evoke the overspilling world. To me, something that does this really well, or a similar thing, is like in that book, Cloud Cuckoo Land, not that, the same one, the same author, All the Light We Cannot See. And the way that the author will write it, it's very immediate, but he's drawing from the history of, like, say he's describing like a tree, it'll be describing like the history of the tree, or like a city, and it's going into the deep roots of the history of it, and like tying together disparate times and places, and there really is in the world more than just like what we think of as the chronological present. More real. The past is also present. The future is also can be made also present in a way. And yeah, reading those books, it's beautiful. And it's really satisfying, and it's like you're seeing things so clearly, and seeing into the world. I will link this article because it's really good. But this is the kind of thing that I'm going for when I try to live in the moment, or in the present, and make the best of it. It's being present to the best and the light that is accessible to me from my position. Sometimes that's an immediate sensory experience, sometimes that is a memory, sometimes that is hope, sometimes that is speculation on something else, somebody else's life, or like how this tree was once like a little sprout or something. Let's see. Yeah, those moments in which the story being told is deeply and almost mystically alert to the world. I think that's what we're going for in saying live in the moment, is to be alert to the world and to the best in the world, right? Because you could be alert to the world, you could be alert to like the possible miseries and worries and stuff, and that's not ideal. Let's see. Everything you want is right where you are. There you go. Listing things. To list is to love, it says. That lone hair, I, the morning sun, and all that lay beyond it were for an instant joined like an eclipse. That is seeing the best, making the best of what is, and like being in the present. So to go back to like the water, to put that in terms of time, it's like now, or well, it's fixed now, but back then, now, the water wasn't available to me in the moment. But there was like the rainwater, there was the community, there was the opportunity to go take a shower at the gym, and I can draw on those things in the present instead of just being fixed on like the lack of water.